Hey Aries, welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your full moon astrology forecast. This is looking at the time period between the full moon on February 16th, that was yesterday, up to the Pisces new moon that is scheduled for March 1st/2nd, 2022. So depending on where you are in the world will determine which date this new moon falls on. So welcome back everyone. Welcome to you if you're new to the channel. This report is for Aries rising, Aries moon, and Aries sun. So one quick announcement, these astrology forecast videos by sign are about to be moved to a subscriber only platform. So if this is content that you value, you may want to consider subscribing. There's a link in the description box below to get to my subscribe star, and it's a bi-monthly forecast for all of the signs that'll be available only to subscribers. It's $3 a month, and then on the alternate weeks there will be Starseed meetups through Zoom that are going to be available to subscribers only. So check it out, $3 a month for all of this content, and of course I'll still be doing free content on all of the platforms that I post on. So let's get into it, Aries. One of the things, well, two things actually, that I left for you in the description box was the new moon report, the Aquarius new moon report for Aries, and then the Pleiadian revival, because I've belabored this grand square full moon to death, leading us here in a lot of different time frames, okay? Like the new moon, obviously this lunar cycle, this particular configuration is important, but also the Pleiadian revival is a time period where the nodal axis of the moon is in relationship to the Pleiades, and this is still that time. And there's tons, this whole grand square that the full moon is part of is also, each angle is galactic starseed marking. So it's important to go back. I would say I love retrospective astrology, and to get some context if you haven't really familiarized yourself with this particular grand square and this full moon. So for Aries, needless to say, it's really, we're cresting this first big hill in this roller coaster, and we really are coming up over, and the full moon is that moment where feeling wise, in our emotions and our subconscious and in our feels, or can we handle the incredible overwhelm and thrill of excitement of this moment. And for the Aries person, it really is down to can what is happening at a societal level, are you personally and emotionally able to handle it in your heart, right? In your voice? Can it hold, can you store, and can you express? Is there a channel for expression for the incredible amount of energy that is stored up from the social order as a whole and the identification with society as a whole, okay, Aries? And I suspect that, as we all did at the full moon and leading up to it, and even just right after, like it was just, you really felt it in some area of your life. And for the Aries person, what I'm seeing is that there is there is a wiping of the slate in a lot of ways. A lot of the energy that's either personal planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, your ruler, and then the sun right now, not a planet, but it's the luminary that has to do with our personality and our identity, and the way we express ourselves. You also have Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune and Pluto also in these areas, these larger, slow-moving planets that represent larger cycles of time, larger cohorts and generations of people. So a lot of personal investment right now, and at least personal identification with these much larger societal cycles coming to a close. And in fact, Aries, it's about to start being way more of a spiritual experience for you than it has been, because the sun's going to come into Pisces in your 12th house. The new moon is going to be in your 12th house. It's going to be conjunct Jupiter, and it's going to bring Uranus into the story. And which is about your value and your resources and what is wealth to you and what has inherent worth to you. And so our resources are anything from our cash in our bank or cash under our mattress, if we own any precious metals, if we own our house, we own our land, our job that provides a salary or an income or a wage, that is second house. Our bodies, like our anatomy, the bones, right? The skin and the hair and the teeth, right? The fundamental building blocks of the scaffolding, the soil. That's the second house. And so for Aries people, it hasn't exactly been a very stable ride here. But this is also the area of the Aries person's soul's evolution, right? The direction that we are all being drawn in order to evolve, which is the Pleiades. And this is very much in the realm of the objective reality for you, Aries. So like I said, there's a cleaning of the slate up in these areas that is for an Aries person that acts on instinct and acts on self-preservation and acts on hopefully a healthy ego, but is still impulsive, still has the spark of life, still has the output of the divine masculine, right? The and potential and desire. And this is expressed in a lot of ways. It's impulsive. You don't really think before you act, and there can be some fiery emotions sometimes, especially if you have a moon in Aries, but for people who have this more individualized personality, there's a lot of energy in society as a whole, right? And it is, like I said, it's closing out cycles, it's cleaning a slate, and it's been demolishing old systems for you in order to come together in union to create new ones. So Aries, in a lot of ways, even though this is all, clearing the slate and cleaning up old stuff and tying up loose ends right now, it's, once we get into the spring and everything starts shifting, and the summer and everything starts shifting into this area, that's when it's going to be like, all right, it's time for Aries to get into the groove and be out front like the Aries person is. So this full moon is a test to see if you emotionally can handle the thrill, the excitement, the overwhelm, the kundalini that is activated with what the hell is going on in society right now, Aries, because you need to get it together so that later in the year you are ready to start investing in yourself and reestablishing yourself in new social and political systems that may be starting to form, right? I mean, this is your career house, and Venus and Mars, your ruler, coming together at this full moon. So there is I think that there has been a lot of limitation for everybody, but for Aries in the very mission, right, holding you back. And Chiron is not doing you any favors in terms of feeling not guilty or shameful for being yourself. But the Aries person, if they are just themselves, everything else naturally falls into place. So every time you get pulled into some sort of old story about who you are, then you're not able to fulfill all of your potential. And I think that has, that's going to be something that Aries people work with for years to come while Chiron is in Aries. So, but it's really the world of value that is the area of change, of transformation for the Aries person, and evolution at a soul level is the objective world, which is the medium of your growth. And when there's Chiron here pulling you back into old stories of who you are and should be, and there's not a lot of stability in the landscape of the world around you and what has value to you, it is difficult, I think, to actually get anything to go. But just know that right now it has more to do with your place and this social order as a whole having massive, reorientation in a lot of ways. So these things are all having connections to what is happening up here. So let's start exploring that. We've talked, like I said, the full moon, right? Is your heart able to handle, right? Is your voice able to handle the birds weighing down the wire, or of the intensity of dropping off of that first hill? That's really for Aries. And, for the most part, yeah, you have Leo as your fifth house, but depending on how you have been I would say depending on which social environment you've been identifying with this whole time is going to have an impact on what this feels like. So there you go. That's how we can read this differently for different people, but the same exact configuration, right? That's where free will and individuality come in. So one of the things that in particular for Aries and Libra is the fact that this weekend we're going to have the moon in Libra, and it's going to be opposite Chiron, which is in your first house, Aries. So we want to talk about that in particular with you, and that same Libra moon will then move forward and have a trine with Saturn. And so by this point, the sun will have come out of your 11th house, is in your 12th house. This is a totally different dynamic, but Saturn is still here and Mercury is still here. So, you've identified yourself with this social environment, but now Mercury is going to come out of its post-retrograde shadow on the 23rd and meet Saturn eventually, and the mental energy that is being put towards problem solving, intellectualizing, and certainly processing very high level data about the social environment is going to kick in, and it's going to have a relationship with Chiron and Uranus. So we want to look at that. But in the meantime, before we even get to that, we see that the moon in Libra, in your 7th house, is going to be opposite Chiron. So a bottleneck, we're all going to have this bottleneck within us that we're going to figure out, how do I get somebody to understand how I feel that I'm in a relationship with, right? 7th house is the social order and a peaceful relationship, a diplomatic relationship that's balanced. Nobody is out of balance the relationship itself is balanced based on what is brought to the relationship. So with the moon here, Aries, really sensitive to your relationships and your interpersonal relationships and your relationship to society in general, right? How being in a certain societal context makes you feel. I think you'll be very sensitive to this and other people, and it's going to be in an opposition with Chiron. So you may feel misunderstood, or you may feel that bottleneck in terms of what you, in terms of expressing emotionally what you have acquired about yourself, or I'd say about the self mostly, but also too, being able to communicate and express that, and for somebody to be able to reflect that back. I think that's going to be brought up, and there's going to be the potential to either do a standard Aries snapback and get hyper inflated in your ego as a result of Chiron, basically turning on and being like, oh, hey, no, your identity is based on these wounds here. So, if this is a challenge and you don't feel understood, or you don't feel heard, or you can't express yourself, there's a bottleneck here. And it's either going to do that or it's going to do the opposite. And the Aries person is going to really lose their sense of self and reconfigure emotionally in order to find peace in their relationships. This is going to be very difficult, because the Aries person could have the extreme of either one rather than finding the fulcrum. Look for the midpoint here where you don't feel ashamed by having a healthy sense of self and ego, but it's not so much that you aren't flexible and you aren't sensitive to the needs of others in your relationships, so that you can intuit how to properly express a very large amount of information or knowledge to send to whoever, right? It could be people you're interpersonally involved with, okay? So when the moon then comes into the trine with Saturn, right after this, the very early morning hours of the yeah, the early morning hours. It's not only going to be this, but then you have the sun in Pisces with Black Moon Lilith. So we'll get to that. But this is the one I want to pay attention to because no matter what, you are Aries inseparable from Libra. You can't uncouple these dualistic relationships because they are one and the same with each other, just like everything else. So with the moon in Libra, it's very close to who you are because it's who you are in your relationships. Well, what it's going to do is this is going to be very emotionally stabilizing from Saturn. Saturn in the 11th house, Saturn the judge in the social environment, Saturn the metronome that is relentlessly perfect and stable and is like a scaffolding of leadership and authority in the social environment. So there's a significant unmasking either by natural law, either by a judge, either by a metronome, right? The metronome isn't changing. It's showing that the orchestra is not in sync. Does that make sense? And so that will stabilize what otherwise may feel like a destabilized experience of a breakdown. The breakdown when an individual and society, for instance, are at odds with each other. There is a breakdown. This weekend, I do feel like the Sabian symbol in particular for this moon in Libra is about two people being under arrest. And it's meant to be seen symbolically, and that's how we will talk about it, but it does bring some things up, and I think Aries and Libra are going to experience this very close to them, either in their own identification of self, or in the case of Aries, in your relationships, in some sort of relationship, yet you have this breakdown that comes as a result of untenable situations. Like there's no way to find peace, and so you get rid of those elements. It would be sobering, but it also is going to be very emotionally stabilizing because you can't stop what this is. And so this might feel weird, or it might be upsetting, or you may feel just very sensitive to aspects of your relationship that you're like, you know what, I have to get this part out of here somehow. But considering that Saturn here at the 11th house in the larger social network, maybe it's just the way that you relate to people that is being brought up in your larger social network. It can go a lot of ways. So I think that this is important and is going to be very difficult for Aries and Libra people. I think it's going to be real destabilizing to the ego and the identity, but it's necessary. Now, keep in mind, we have this trine with Black Moon Lilith in the 4th house. And then we're going to move on to the 3rd quarter moon, because that's going to be, again, where Aries is really going to get tested in terms of where your strength, you might be drawing your strength from one place, but you've already found your identification with something that is asking you to surrender, right? And not necessarily surrender as in a battle, but maybe it depends on who we're talking about in terms of an Aries person. But this trine here is a moment to, again, emotionally destabilize all of ourselves. And for the Aries person at 2 degrees of Cancer, right, this is find your way to be emotionally secure by hovering above everything, if that makes sense. It's such a strong and strange thing, but part of giving yourself over and surrendering to the karma of the situation, surrendering back to source, surrendering to the will of God, however, surrendering to your sentence, right? The 11th house is the jury that convicts, for instance, or doesn't convict, and the judge renders the sentence if they are, and that's where you live it out, is the 12th house. This is why isolation and prisons and hospitals and things like that fall under the 12th house. But it also too is grace and compassion and a sense of unconditional love and forgiveness, right? Forgiveness is also here. So the Aries person is already, as the moon comes into the 12th house, is already, moving into a phase of giving oneself to the return back to the beginning, right? And so there's a lot of clearing up of loose ends and karmic ties here with the moon in the 12th, or sun in the 12th house in general. And in Pisces with Jupiter here and Neptune, spiritual journey is just about to turn on in a big way for Aries people. And this trine is like it's like the best way to protect or exercise some caution when you are fully identified with the spiritual whole, so you don't lose yourself, is to find the way to stay rooted in who you are, but also hover above it all. Like, you got to find that magic carpet that emotionally, or like an invisibility cloak or something within yourself, or some other means within your own personal life, Aries, that's going to protect you and preserve some part of you as you are giving another part of yourself over to the end of the cycle. I don't know. I get the sense that a lot of Aries people are really going to either come forward as heroes or be the bad guys in some way. It's weird. Nobody here is going to be the bad guy, but there may be some uncomfortable conversations or experiences in your relationships as a result of this unmasking at a social level, right? That you can't hide things in a social environment that functions on being interconnected. So there is a necessity to find a way to, it's not to insulate ourselves, to be able to simultaneously transcend, but be grounded and rooted emotionally in this situation. It's very interesting. So when we come forward to the third quarter moon, Aries, this is, again, where there's going to be, hold on one second. There we go. Where there's going to be, let's see. It's going to be very tempting with this moon in Sagittarius, Aries, because it's another fire sign. It's going to be very tempting to gather a lot of your inner strength. That we seem to really gather a lot of inner strength with a moon in Sag, right? Because it's not just our own inner strength, like the fourth house where we get our own power. It's the meaning of what we can do together that really sparks the transmutation, and its action, right? And so I think there'll be a tendency for all of us, but especially for Aries in the ninth house, to gather a sense of inner strength and meaning by working together, right? And this isn't just your belief systems, Aries. You're tapping into collective belief systems, religions, and philosophies that have to do with what draws you, the power of your relationships, and the energy that's generated is the eighth house. And then you come into the ninth house, and it's like an entire belief system that's been generated and is what continues to catalyze the actual creation of whatever, right? Whatever you're trying to accomplish, your 10th house. So Aries, I think that it'll be very tempting to really draw that strength from the group solidarity, working together as a team, actually doing it, feeling into it, and being sensitive to it. But again, the sun is in the 12th house, the surrender of the self, the surrender of the identity, the surrender to everything, right? Even meaning and dogma and belief system all goes away when you return back to the one source of all, right? The vibration of the universe or consciousness. So Aries, I think, is going to struggle with that, because your MO is to act, and even to act emotionally or to understand something, to do something, right? And the sun in the 12th house is just like, nope. That's not, you're giving yourself now in some way. And it might be not that easy to grasp, right? The 12th house is not exactly the most like obvious realm. And so you may find things that are way more connected to your dream state and to your astral state, all of, past lives, your multidimensional experiences and your starseed experiences. They may be, and karma. There's just a lot of, like I said, clearing the decks, right? And so, it's going to be difficult for Aries to really let go. But you do have Mars here. You have Venus here. They're already conjunct in this area. And now they are traveling together. And each in turn is going to make a connection to Neptune in this 12th house. So while this third quarter moon is more of a thorn in the side than the full moon was, right? Because now we have a crisis moment of like, well, what should we even pay attention to, right? How we feel or what we identify with, and both, right? That's the thing about a square. You face the conflict and you learn from that situation. But now these two, there's some sort of like balancing of accounts and a recompense that's going on with your ruler Mars and Venus traveling together in Capricorn. Something is going to be there's going to be a return on an investment, right? The recompense, a balancing of accounts in terms of the economy or the government in some way, or in your case, your career or your mission or the organizations you've committed yourself to. Something is being balanced out. In terms of the medium and the resources themselves and the output of those resources, Venus and Mars together. It's going to balance out this area enough that it will release and expand considerably your resources to give yourself spiritually to this realm, right? It's going to be a large expansion for all of us, but for Aries, it's really going to, it's like once this aspect is renegotiated, it's not even a renegotiation. Once there is a recompense and you are, there's a sense of recognition or reward for what's been done that's coming from these two regal figures of the warrior and, the maid, right? They come, the knight and the princess, right? They come together in their union and they are blessing Neptune here in your 12th house. Like, okay, now it's time for you to start aligning with truly this very spiritual journey, right? This is going to be happening at the same time. So that's something else to consider. While there may be a emotional need to be like, it's all about working together as a team and really acting and feeling into that value. There's something else that is like, it's not passive, but it is, it's a rebalancing, and you will find that your spiritual work is going to get a huge dump of resources so that you can actually focus more there. And at the same time this is happening, Mercury is in a sextile to Chiron, and then will come into a square with Uranus, and it's no longer in its retrograde shadow. So the mental realm of problem solving and intellectualizing and communication at the social level is at a very high level right now, and you really want to be around other people that are at this level as well, and you are considering the patterns and the information about the social environment as a whole, and really using the mental sphere to process this data. This is a lot of data. I mean, you're like basically taking in a laser beam into your own mind right now and extracting this zip file. It's going to be very intense as it continues to move through Aquarius. So what you can do at this point, Aries, is if you can find a stillness in your mind when it comes to what is happening in the social environment as a whole, it's going to, again, there's going to be a resource you can invest into a healthy ego, right? Because that the disturbance from the social environment that you will be picking up on through your own mind, just because you are just so, everybody has, with Mercury and Aquarius, is having this connection, but you're picking up right from the social environment, or your networks, your social media networks, right? And your community as a whole. If you can find some stillness here, and not be disturbed by the wave function of inner information coming in to your own mind, it's going to, that stillness will allow, I think, for you again to activate and to invest into a new identity, right? Into someone new, or to at least shake off this old identity of who you have believed that you are. And then Mercury is going to come into a square right after that with Uranus. So, and start coming into new territory entirely. So that's the other thing too, is that while Mercury is still in its post-retrograde shadow and sextile to Chiron, we've gone over all of this information from Aquarius all the way back into Capricorn and then back again. And so finally, I mean, this isn't the first time that this is happening, but now there's so many experiences and deep analysis of transformation and power in terms of the institutions that we're part of. Now you can really take all of that data and sit with it in a quiet moment and get a full picture that is going to allow you to sweep away, I would say, a lot of old identity issues that have been really holding you back, right? Instead of getting disturbed by the way, like I said, the wave function of the social environment as a whole. You can't stop yourself from necessarily being sensitive to it, but you can calm your own mind in that situation and be really inspired to decide who you are. So, but the thing is right after it comes into this square with Uranus, and it's like, okay, well, that's great, but, reality is glitching in and out, and there are infinite amounts of possibilities of what actually has real value to the Aries person. So I think that it'll immediately start to make this wave function again in your mind almost immediately with Uranus right after that. And that's okay too, because it may be in a square, but it's that discomfort there with the unyielding shifting of reality that Uranus represents, that is also allowing for innovation and allowing for a new way or an outside of the box way of considering something. And when you believe in a social hierarchy, which there is to a certain extent, I would say that everybody is equal in the eyes of God, but also is on their own pathway, it can be, you kind of get locked into that mentally, and maybe this square to Uranus is allowing for some innovation, or to think outside of that box and consider a different reality that we want to be in. I think that's very interesting. You have a lot, Aries, you're thinking a lot about what's going on in the social environment as a whole now, and it's just going to get more intense as Mercury continues to move through Aquarius. So this time frame is going to be very agitating for everybody, but for Aries, it really just doesn't quit with the moon in Libra and then the third quarter moon at this point. So when we get to the new moon on the 2nd, all the energy for you, Aries, is going to be in the 12th house. It's going to be Jupiter. It's a galactic avatar degree here at 13 degrees Pisces, 12 to 13 degrees Pisces. It is a Syrian starseed marking, like you're about to step into this avatar role. We all are, but it's going to be in the spiritual, transcendental context. This is really exciting. And part of that is going to be this ability to really find some mental authority and stability to really do some damage control in this area. So again, Aries, being typical Aries that go out in front in all of the situations, are probably going to find themselves really attempting to use all the resources of the social environment to put out some sort of careless event in the social order in general. So, and maybe it's just something that you have to have mental fortitude that Saturn will give you in this instance to mentally handle the careless or damage that needs to be controlled. And then at the same time, like I said, you know, what's going on in your 12th house here, like stepping into this avatar role, like for real. And Jupiter as like an actual symbol of it is also going to open the door to exactly what it is that does have value, right? And you know, showing you that there is more than maybe what you thought about the world around you, Aries, and your role within it. And so you can really be a symbol of courage for other people, especially with Jupiter here as part of this new moon. You can really ignite this development, or to just step into this avatar role, I think, for people as a spiritual leader, honestly, that is maybe going to actually open a door for you about the value of that. The other piece of this is that Black Moon Lilith is going to be in conjunction with Sirius at the time of this new moon. So, and in a trine to it as well. So we come back to this very primal, urge for self-preservation, some sort of connection to a planetary blueprint, deeper than just ourselves, that has a lot to do for the Aries person with protection and emotional security and the lattice work and the bonds and our family, right? There's something very important here that is going to anchor the Aries person as they are very much becoming a symbol of compassion and courage at the same time at a spiritual level. So I'm curious to see how this goes, Aries. I mean, you do have you're the people with the stamina, just keep going. And I feel like that's what's going to be happening for you. So, wow, there's a lot of information here. So I'm going to leave it here for now. If you want to get more information about how to support this channel and how to book a personal reading or energy work session, you can do so by following any of the links in the description box below. And certainly you can stick around at the end of this video to get more information. Until next time, Aries, you got this. You got this. You're always out front, and we need your warriorship nature to get through what's going on in the near future. So take care, Aries, and I'll see you next time.